Michelangelo Buonarroti stands as one of the most celebrated artists in human history. His name is synonymous with artistic genius, and his works have shaped the course of Western art. From his awe-inspiring sculptures to his monumental frescoes and innovative architectural designs, Michelangelo's influence transcends time, leaving an indelible mark on the Renaissance and beyond. His mastery over various forms of artistic expression has made him a symbol of creativity, perseverance, and divine inspiration. This dissertation aims to explore the life, works, and enduring legacy of Michelangelo, examining how his contributions define the artistic standards of his time and influenced generations of artists that followed. Born in 1475 in Caprese, Italy, Michelangelo displayed remarkable artistic talent from an early age. His relentless pursuit of perfection and dedication to his craft set him apart from his contemporaries. Unlike many artists of his time, who specialized in a single medium, Michelangelo excelled in sculpture, painting, and architecture, achieving unparalleled success in each field. His ability to breathe life into marble, to capture human emotion in painting, and to reimagine architectural forms demonstrated his extraordinary versatility. His works not only reflect technical brilliance, but also convey deep philosophical and religious themes, making them timeless masterpieces. The Renaissance, a period of immense cultural and intellectual growth, provided the perfect backdrop for Michelangelo's rise to prominence. This era, characterized by a revival of classical antiquity and an emphasis on humanism, encouraged artistic innovation and individual expression. Michelangelo thrived in this environment, drawing inspiration from ancient Greek and Roman art while infusing his work with a profound sense of spirituality and human emotion. His art encapsulates the essence of Renaissance ideals: balance, harmony, and the pursuit of beauty, while also reflecting his personal struggles, beliefs, and aspirations. One of Michelangelo's most defining traits was his relentless pursuit of perfection. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail and his belief that art should be an extension of divine creation. His sculptural philosophy, rooted in the idea that the figure already existed within the marble, guided his approach to carving. He saw himself not as a creator, but as a liberator, freeing the perfect form trapped within the stone. This dedication to his craft often led him to work under extreme physical and emotional strain, as he sought to achieve an artistic ideal that transcended human limitations. Despite his immense talent and success, Michelangelo's career was not without challenges. His relationships with patrons, including popes and powerful families, were often fraught with tension. His ambitious projects, such as the Sistine Chapel ceiling and the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, were marked by immense difficulties, both technical and personal. Yet, his unwavering determination and unparalleled skill enabled him to overcome these obstacles, producing works that continue to inspire awe centuries later. Michelangelo's influence extended far beyond his own time. His works set new standards for artistic excellence and deeply influenced the development of Baroque and Mannerist art. Later artists, including John Lorenzo Bernini and Peter Paul Rubens, drew inspiration from his dynamic compositions and emotional intensity. His contributions to architecture, particularly in St. Peter's Basilica, shaped the course of European architectural design. Even today, his impact can be seen in modern artistic practices, where his techniques and principles continue to be studied and admired. While Michelangelo is often remembered for his artistic achievements, his personal life and character add depth to his legacy. He was a deeply introspective individual, known for his solitary nature and intense devotion to his work. His poetry, filled with themes of love, faith, and artistic struggle, offers insight into his innermost thoughts. Though he worked for some of the most powerful figures of his time, he remained fiercely independent, often clashing with patrons over creative control. His life was a testament to the idea that true artistic greatness comes from an unyielding commitment to one's vision. Michelangelo's art is not merely a reflection of the Renaissance. It is a cornerstone of Western cultural heritage, His ability to capture the human experience in its most profound form continues to resonate with audiences across generations. His works, such as David, the Pietà, and The Last Judgment, are not just artistic achievements but also philosophical and theological expressions that invite deep contemplation. They stand as testaments to the enduring power of art to move, challenge, and inspire. Michelangelo Buonarroti was born on March 6, 1475, in the small town of Caprese, Italy, a village located in the region of Tuscany. His full name, Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, reflected his family's noble yet modest background. Though his family belonged to the Florentine gentry, they were not wealthy, and financial struggles marked much of Michelangelo's early life. His father, Ludovico di Leonardo Buonarroti Simoni, was a government official who moved the family back to Florence shortly after Michelangelo's birth. This move proved significant, as Florence was the artistic and intellectual heart of the Italian Renaissance, providing the perfect environment for Michelangelo's development. From a young age, Michelangelo showed an inclination toward the arts, a path that did not align with his father's expectations. Ludovico initially resisted his son's artistic ambitions, as he considered manual work, including painting and sculpting, beneath the dignity of their noble lineage. However, Michelangelo's passion and undeniable talent eventually convinced his father to allow him to pursue an artistic career. At the age of 13, he was apprenticed to Domenico Ghirlandaio, one of the most prominent painters in Florence at the time. This apprenticeship marked the beginning of Michelangelo's formal training in art. Under Ghirlandaio's mentorship, Michelangelo was introduced to the fundamental techniques of fresco painting, drawing, and composition. Ghirlandaio was known for his detailed and realistic depictions of human figures, and his teachings provided Michelangelo with a strong foundation in the principles of Renaissance art. Although Michelangelo's time in Ghirlandaio's workshop lasted only a year, it was instrumental in shaping his artistic sensibilities. His exceptional talent quickly set him apart from his peers, earning him an invitation to study at the Medici court, an opportunity that would profoundly influence his career. At the age of 15, Michelangelo entered the palace of Lorenzo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence and one of the greatest patrons of the Renaissance. The Medici court was a cultural hub, attracting some of the most brilliant minds of the time, including poets, philosophers, and artists. Under Lorenzo's patronage, Michelangelo was exposed to Neoplatonism, a philosophical movement that sought to reconcile classical philosophy with Christian thought. This intellectual atmosphere had a lasting impact on his worldview, shaping the spiritual and philosophical themes that would later emerge in his work. During his time at the Medici court, Michelangelo had access to an extensive collection of classical sculptures, which fueled his fascination with the human form. He meticulously studied these ancient masterpieces, developing an understanding of anatomy and proportion that would define his sculptural style. It was during this period that he created some of his earliest known works, including Madonna of the Stairs and Battle of the Centaurs. These sculptures displayed a remarkable level of skill for an artist so young, showcasing his ability to capture movement, emotion, and depth with extraordinary precision. Despite the privileges and opportunities provided by the Medici court, Michelangelo's journey was not without challenges. His intense personality and independent spirit often led to conflicts with other artists and intellectuals. He was deeply committed to his own artistic vision, refusing to conform to conventional standards or trends. His self-discipline and relentless work ethic distinguished him from his peers, setting the stage for his later achievements. The political climate of Florence also played a crucial role in Michelangelo's early development. In 1492, Lorenzo de' Medici passed away, leading to a period of instability in Florence. Without his greatest patron, Michelangelo found himself in an uncertain position. He left Florence for a time, traveling to Bologna and later to Rome, where he sought new commissions and opportunities. This transition marked the beginning of his ascent to international fame, as he would soon create works that would solidify his reputation as one of the greatest artists of his time. While in Rome, Michelangelo's focus shifted primarily to sculpture. He dedicated himself to studying human anatomy, often dissecting cadavers to gain a deeper understanding of muscle structure and movement. This practice, though controversial, provided him with unparalleled knowledge of the human body, allowing him to create sculptures of extraordinary realism. His ability to depict the human form with such anatomical precision became one of the defining characteristics of his work. Michelangelo's early education and experiences laid the foundation for his artistic philosophy. His exposure to classical antiquity, Renaissance humanism, and Christian theology all contributed to the depth and complexity of his art. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who viewed art as a means of decoration or storytelling, Michelangelo saw it as a divine pursuit, a way to reveal the beauty of creation through human craftsmanship. This belief would guide his approach to every artistic endeavor, from sculpture to painting to architecture. Michelangelo's early life and education were crucial in shaping the artist he would become. His time in Florence, his training under Ghirlandaio, and his association with the Medici court provided him with the skills, knowledge, and intellectual depth that would define his artistic career. Even in his formative years, his extraordinary talent and unique artistic vision set him apart. As he moved forward, he carried with him the lessons learned during this period, using them as the foundation upon which he would build some of the greatest masterpieces in the history of art. Michelangelo's early years in Florence were crucial in shaping his artistic identity. After leaving the Medici court in the wake of Lorenzo de' Medici's death in 1492, he continued his artistic training, refining his sculptural techniques and deepening his understanding of human anatomy. This period of his life was marked by both artistic discovery and personal struggle, as Florence underwent political turmoil following the expulsion of the Medici family. Despite these challenges, Michelangelo remained committed to his craft, producing works that showcased his immense talent and foreshadowed the masterpieces that would follow. One of the defining characteristics of Michelangelo's early work was his devotion to the study of the human form. Unlike many artists of his time, who relied on theoretical proportions, Michelangelo pursued direct anatomical observation. He conducted extensive dissections of human cadavers, a practice that, although controversial, provided him with an unmatched understanding of the structure and movement of the human body. This meticulous approach to anatomy allowed him to infuse his sculptures with an unparalleled sense of realism and vitality, qualities that would become hallmarks of his artistic style. During this period, Michelangelo created some of his earliest surviving works, including the Madonna of the Stairs and the Battle of the Centaurs. The Madonna of the Stairs, sculpted when Michelangelo was only around 15 years old, demonstrates his ability to convey depth and emotion through shallow relief. The figures possess a sense of movement and fluidity, characteristics that would become more pronounced in his later works. Battle of the Centaurs, on the other hand, showcases his fascination with classical themes and dynamic composition. The piece, depicting a chaotic struggle between men and centaurs, reveals his early mastery of the human form in motion, a skill that would define his future sculptures. Despite these early successes, Michelangelo faced increasing difficulties due to the political instability in Florence. After Lorenzo de' Medici's death, the city came under the influence of the Dominican friar Girolamo Savonarola, who preached against the excesses of Renaissance culture. Savonarola's rise led to the destruction of many artworks and the suppression of artistic expression. Michelangelo, recognizing the danger posed by the changing political climate, decided to leave Florence in search of new opportunities. In 1496, he traveled to Rome, a move that would prove pivotal in his career. In Rome, Michelangelo quickly established himself as one of the most promising young sculptors of his generation. He received commissions from powerful patrons, including Cardinal Raphael Riario, who recognized his extraordinary talent. It was in Rome that Michelangelo sculpted one of his most famous early works, the Pieta, a masterpiece that not only demonstrated his technical skill, but also solidified his reputation as a master sculptor. The Pieta, completed in 1499, depicts the Virgin Mary cradling the lifeless body of Christ. The composition, characterized by its delicate balance of sorrow and serenity, showcased Michelangelo's ability to convey deep emotion through marble. The Pieta was an immediate success, earning Michelangelo widespread recognition. Its stunning realism, exquisite detail, and harmonious composition set a new standard for Renaissance sculpture. Perhaps most striking was Michelangelo's interpretation of the Virgin Mary, whom he depicted as a youthful and idealized figure rather than an aged and grief-stricken mother. This artistic choice, though unconventional, was rooted in Michelangelo's belief in divine beauty and purity. The success of the Pieta secured Michelangelo's reputation as one of the leading artists of his time, leading to even greater opportunities. Following the triumph of the Pieta, Michelangelo returned to Florence in 1501, where he received one of the most prestigious commissions of his career, the creation of David. This commission came from the Opera del Duomo, the organization responsible for the decoration of Florence Cathedral. The city's leaders sought a symbol of Florence's strength and resilience, and Michelangelo's David would come to embody these ideals. The sculpture, carved from a single block of marble, stands at an imposing height of over 17 feet, reflecting both the grandeur of Renaissance ideals and the technical brilliance of its creator. Michelangelo's David was a revolutionary interpretation of the biblical hero. Unlike previous depictions of David, which often portrayed him after his victory over Goliath, Michelangelo chose to depict him in a moment of tense anticipation, just before the battle. This choice imbued the sculpture with a sense of psychological intensity and inner strength. The detailed musculature, contrapposto stance, and expressive gaze conveyed both confidence and vulnerability, making David one of the most lifelike sculptures of the Renaissance. The statue was so highly regarded that, instead of being placed atop the cathedral as originally intended, it was positioned in the Piazza della Signoria, where it stood as a powerful political and artistic statement. The completion of David marked a turning point in Michelangelo's career. He was no longer just a promising young artist, but a recognized master whose works symbolized the ideals of the Renaissance. The statue's unveiling in 1504 was met with widespread admiration, and Michelangelo's status as the preeminent sculptor of his time was firmly established. His success in Florence paved the way for even greater projects, including his later commissions in Rome, where he would undertake some of his most ambitious works. Michelangelo's Florentine years were a period of artistic growth, experimentation, and breakthrough achievements. His early works, including the Madonna of the Stairs, Battle of the Centaurs, Pieta, and David, showcased his exceptional ability to merge technical precision with profound emotional depth. These sculptures not only reflected his deep understanding of human anatomy and movement, but also conveyed his unique artistic vision. By the time he completed David, Michelangelo had already established himself as one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance. His Florentine years laid the foundation for the monumental works that would follow, ensuring his place in history as a true artistic genius. Michelangelo's rise to fame was marked by two of his most iconic sculptures, the Pieta and David. These masterpieces not only solidified his reputation as one of the greatest sculptors of all time, but also demonstrated his unparalleled ability to transform marble into living forms. Through these works, Michelangelo showcased his mastery of anatomy, composition, and emotional depth, elevating sculpture to new heights in the Renaissance. His ability to blend classical influences with his own unique artistic vision set him apart from his contemporaries and established him as a central figure in the artistic world of the early 16th century. One of the defining moments in Michelangelo's career came in 1496 when he moved to Rome in search of new opportunities. At just 21 years old, he had already gained recognition in Florence, but it was in Rome that he would receive the commission that launched him into international prominence. The French Cardinal Jean de Villers-les-Grâce, who served as the envoy of King Charles VIII, commissioned Michelangelo to create a sculpture for his tomb in St. Peter's Basilica. This work would become the Pieta, one of the most celebrated sculptures in art history. Completed in 1499, the Pieta depicts the Virgin Mary holding the lifeless body of Christ after the crucifixion. Unlike previous depictions of this subject, Michelangelo's interpretation emphasized serenity, grace, and divine beauty rather than raw suffering. Mary's youthful appearance, smooth features, and gentle embrace of her son create an atmosphere of quiet sorrow rather than overt grief. This choice was a testament to Michelangelo's belief in idealized beauty as a reflection of the divine. The composition, with Mary's flowing robes and the delicate positioning of Christ's body, created a sense of harmony and balance that mesmerized viewers. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Pietà was its technical execution. Michelangelo carved the entire sculpture from a single block of Carrara marble, a feat that required immense precision and skill. The level of detail, from the soft folds of Mary's garments to the anatomical perfection of Christ's body, demonstrated Michelangelo's deep understanding of the human form. The Pietà was so lifelike and refined that it was often mistaken for the work of a divine hand. According to legend, after hearing people attribute the sculpture to another artist, Michelangelo secretly carved his name across Mary's sash, making it the only work he ever signed. The unveiling of the Pietà brought Michelangelo instant fame. It was hailed as a masterpiece of Renaissance sculpture, admired for its emotional depth, technical brilliance, and spiritual intensity. The sculpture's success led to further commissions and secured Michelangelo's place among the greatest artists of his time. However, rather than resting on his achievements, Michelangelo sought new challenges. Soon after completing the Pietà, he returned to Florence, where he would create another of his most famous works, David. The commission for David came from the Opera del Duomo in 1501. The project had a long and complicated history, as the massive block of marble had been abandoned by previous sculptors who deemed it too difficult to work with. Michelangelo, however, saw potential in the neglected stone and took on the challenge of sculpting a figure that would surpass all previous representations of the biblical hero. Over the next 3 years, he dedicated himself entirely to the project, working tirelessly to bring his vision to life. Unlike earlier depictions of David, which often showed him after his victory over Goliath, Michelangelo chose to capture him in a moment of tense anticipation. David stands in a contrapposto pose, his weight shifted onto one leg, his muscles taut, and his gaze focused with determination. This portrayal conveys not just physical strength, but also psychological intensity, highlighting David's courage and intelligence rather than merely his triumph. The oversized hands and head emphasize his power and readiness for battle, reinforcing the idea that true strength comes from inner resolve rather than sheer force. When David was unveiled in 1504, it caused an immediate sensation. The Florentine government decided to place it in the Piazza della Signoria, outside the Palazzo Vecchio, rather than its original intended location on the cathedral. The sculpture became a symbol of Florence's resilience and independence, representing the city's defiance against larger, more powerful adversaries. Michelangelo's David was not just a biblical figure, it was a political statement, embodying the spirit of the Florentine Republic. The artistic significance of David cannot be overstated. It marked a turning point in Renaissance sculpture, setting new standards for anatomical accuracy, composition, and expressive power. The level of detail Michelangelo achieved, from the veins in David's hands to the subtle expression of his face, demonstrated his unmatched ability to capture the human form in its most dynamic and lifelike state. The sculpture's influence extended far beyond Florence, inspiring artists across Europe and solidifying Michelangelo's reputation as the greatest sculptor of his era. Following the success of David, Michelangelo became one of the most sought-after artists in Italy. His fame attracted the attention of Pope Julius II, who would later commission him to undertake some of the most ambitious projects of his career, including the painting of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. However, despite his growing recognition, Michelangelo remained deeply focused on his artistic pursuits, constantly pushing the boundaries of his craft and striving for perfection. The Pietà and David were not just artistic triumphs. They were statements of Michelangelo's genius and his ability to transform marble into expressions of human emotion and divine beauty. These works captured the essence of Renaissance ideals: anatomical precision, harmony, and intellectual depth, while also demonstrating Michelangelo's unique artistic vision. The success of these sculptures catapulted him to fame and paved the way for the monumental achievements that would follow in his career. Through these masterpieces, Michelangelo redefined the possibilities of sculpture, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire artists and admirers to this day. Following the success of David and the Pietà, Michelangelo had firmly established himself as one of the greatest sculptors of his time. However, his reputation would soon expand beyond sculpture, as he was called upon to undertake one of the most ambitious artistic projects in history, the painting of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. This commission, given to him by Pope Julius II in 1508, would test Michelangelo's abilities, patience, and endurance, ultimately resulting in one of the greatest masterpieces of the Renaissance. At the time of the commission, Michelangelo did not consider himself a painter. His expertise lay in sculpture, and he was deeply invested in his work on the tomb of Pope Julius II, a project he had begun years earlier but had been repeatedly delayed due to the Pope's shifting priorities. When Julius II insisted that Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling, the artist initially resisted. He viewed the task as a diversion from his true passion, suspecting that his rivals at the papal court, particularly the painter Raphael and the architect Bramante, had conspired to set him up for failure. However, unable to refuse the Pope's command, Michelangelo reluctantly accepted the challenge. The original plan for the Sistine Chapel ceiling was relatively simple. Julius II had initially requested a series of geometric patterns and apostles. However, once Michelangelo immersed himself in the project, his creative ambition took over. He proposed a far more complex and grandiose composition, one that would depict the story of Genesis, illustrating the creation of the world, the fall of humanity, and the promise of redemption. This decision transformed the ceiling into a vast, theological narrative, rich with symbolism and artistic innovation. Painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling was a physically and mentally exhausting endeavor. Michelangelo had to work on scaffolding high above the chapel floor, often lying on his back for hours at a time, applying paint to the curved surface of the ceiling. The technique he used, fresco painting, required great skill and speed, as pigments had to be applied to wet plaster before it dried. Any mistake meant scraping away the plaster and starting over. Michelangelo endured immense discomfort, developing back and neck pain that he would suffer from for years to come. In a famous letter to a friend, he described the toll the work had taken on him, lamenting his cramped posture, paint dripping into his eyes, and his overall misery. Despite these difficulties, Michelangelo's vision took shape over 4 years, from 1508 to 1512. The final composition included over 300 figures, spanning 9 central panels that depicted the story of Genesis, surrounded by prophets, sibyls, and ancestors of Christ. The most iconic image from the ceiling is the creation of Adam, in which God extends his finger toward Adam, imparting the spark of life. This scene, with its powerful symbolism and dynamic composition, has become one of the most recognizable works of art in history. Michelangelo's depiction of the human form in the Sistine Chapel ceiling was groundbreaking. Unlike traditional religious paintings, which often portrayed figures in rigid, formal poses, Michelangelo's characters were full of movement, energy, and emotion. His deep understanding of anatomy, honed through years of sculptural study, allowed him to create figures that appeared lifelike and heroic. The musculature, gestures, and expressions of his figures conveyed a sense of divine power and human struggle, reinforcing the theological themes of creation, sin, and redemption. The reaction to the Sistine Chapel ceiling upon its completion was overwhelming. Visitors to the chapel were awestruck by the sheer scale and beauty of the frescoes. Pope Julius II himself was astounded by Michelangelo's achievement, recognizing the work as one of the greatest artistic feats of the era. The ceiling was not merely a decoration. It was a monumental statement of Renaissance humanism, combining classical ideals of beauty with Christian spirituality. It elevated Michelangelo from a master sculptor to a universal genius, proving that his talent extended beyond marble and into the realm of painting. The impact of the Sistine Chapel ceiling extended far beyond Michelangelo's lifetime. It influenced generations of artists, including Raphael, who incorporated elements of Michelangelo's dynamic figures into his own work. The frescoes also reinforced the idea that art could serve as a bridge between the human and the divine, a notion that shaped the course of Western art for centuries. Even today, millions of visitors travel to Vatican City to witness the breathtaking beauty of Michelangelo's masterpiece. Despite the universal praise for the Sistine Chapel ceiling, Michelangelo himself remained unsatisfied with the experience. He viewed the project as an arduous burden, one that had interrupted his true passion for sculpture. In his later years, he expressed frustration that the world knew him primarily as a painter rather than a sculptor, despite his own belief that his best work was in marble. Nevertheless, the Sistine Chapel ceiling stands as a testament to his genius, demonstrating his ability to push the boundaries of artistic expression in ways that no one before him had done. Michelangelo's work on the Sistine Chapel ceiling was a defining moment in his career and in the history of art. Despite his initial reluctance, he approached the project with the same intensity and dedication that characterized all his work, transforming it into one of the greatest artistic achievements of all time. The frescoes not only showcased his mastery of the human form, but also conveyed profound religious and philosophical themes, making the ceiling a cornerstone of Renaissance art. Though Michelangelo may have considered himself a sculptor above all else, the Sistine Chapel ceiling proved that his genius knew no bounds. Following the triumph of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, Michelangelo's status as one of the greatest artists of his time was undisputed. However, despite his success, his career in the years that followed was marked by conflicts, unfulfilled commissions, and a relentless pursuit of artistic perfection. His deep sense of duty, combined with his uncompromising artistic vision, often led to tensions with his patrons. Among his later works, The Last Judgment, painted on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, stands as one of his most controversial yet awe-inspiring masterpieces. After completing the Sistine Chapel ceiling in 1512, Michelangelo hoped to return to sculpture, particularly his long-delayed project, the tomb of Pope Julius II. Originally envisioned as a grand monument featuring more than 40 statues, the tomb had been repeatedly scaled down due to financial and political obstacles. Michelangelo found himself in constant disputes with the Pope's heirs, who pressured him to complete the project despite continuous interruptions. The final version, completed in 1545, was far less ambitious than his original plan, but it did include one of his most celebrated sculptures, Moses, a work of extraordinary power and dynamism. During this time, Michelangelo was also drawn into the political and religious upheavals of Italy. Florence, his beloved city, faced instability as it struggled between Republican rule and Medici control. Michelangelo, a staunch supporter of the Florentine Republic, found himself at odds with the powerful Medici family, who had once been his patrons. When the Medici returned to power in 1530 with the support of the papacy, Michelangelo feared for his safety. Although he eventually reconciled with them, this period of his life was fraught with uncertainty and personal struggle. Despite these conflicts, Michelangelo continued to receive prestigious commissions. In 1534, he was summoned back to Rome by Pope Clement VII, who requested that he paint the Last Judgment on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel. The project was later reaffirmed by Pope Paul III after Clement's death, making it one of the most significant undertakings of Michelangelo's later years. Unlike the ceiling frescoes, which depicted the creation of humanity, The Last Judgment was a dramatic and terrifying vision of the end of time, reflecting Michelangelo's evolving artistic and spiritual concerns. Work on The Last Judgment began in 1536 and took nearly 5 years to complete. The composition, spanning the entire wall behind the altar, is dominated by a colossal depiction of Christ at the center, surrounded by saints, angels, and the resurrected dead. Unlike traditional representations of the Last Judgment, which often showed Christ as a serene figure of divine mercy, Michelangelo's Christ is a powerful, muscular figure, raising his arm in a commanding gesture that separates the saved from the damned. This portrayal emphasized divine justice and the inescapable fate of humanity, a theme that resonated deeply in a period marked by religious reform and turmoil. One of the most striking aspects of The Last Judgment is its intense emotional and physical dynamism. Figures twist and contort in dramatic movements, expressing despair, hope, fear, and salvation. The damned are dragged into the depths of hell by grotesque demons, while the saved ascend toward heaven. The chaotic energy of the composition contrasts sharply with the orderly harmony of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, reflecting Michelangelo's shifting perspective on human existence and divine judgment. His later works moved away from the idealized beauty of the High Renaissance and toward the expressive intensity of mannerism, a style that emphasized movement, tension, and exaggerated forms. The Last Judgment was met with both admiration and controversy upon its completion in 1541. Many praised Michelangelo's technical mastery and the fresco's overwhelming power, but others criticized its nudity and unconventional approach to religious imagery. The inclusion of nude figures, particularly among the saints, was seen by some as inappropriate for a sacred space. The Catholic Church, responding to growing pressures from the Counter-Reformation, later ordered modifications to the fresco, including the addition of draperies to cover the nudity. Despite these alterations, The Last Judgment remains one of the most profound and provocative works in Christian art. Michelangelo's personal struggles during this period were also reflected in the fresco. He included a self-portrait in the figure of Saint Bartholomew, who holds his own flayed skin, symbolizing Michelangelo's suffering and disillusionment. This gesture revealed his inner turmoil, as he grappled with both the immense expectations placed upon him and his own spiritual concerns. His later works often carried a sense of melancholy, reflecting his contemplation of mortality and redemption. Despite the challenges and criticism surrounding The Last Judgment, it solidified Michelangelo's reputation as the greatest artist of his time. His ability to convey the drama of human destiny through grand, monumental compositions was unparalleled. The fresco's raw emotion, complex symbolism, and extraordinary execution ensured its place as one of the defining masterpieces of the Renaissance. The Last Judgment marked a turning point in Michelangelo's career and in the history of art. It was a work of immense power and complexity, reflecting the shifting religious and artistic landscape of the 16th century. While Michelangelo faced political struggles, artistic disputes, and personal doubts, he continued to push the boundaries of artistic expression. Through his work on the Sistine Chapel, he not only redefined fresco painting, but also left a lasting legacy that continues to inspire awe and admiration. As Michelangelo entered the final decades of his life, his artistic focus shifted from sculpture and painting to architecture. While he had already demonstrated architectural skill in earlier works, such as the Laurentian Library and the Medici Chapel in Florence, his greatest achievement in this field came with his work on St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This monumental project, which had been in progress for decades, required not only artistic vision, but also technical expertise and political negotiation. Michelangelo's contributions to St. Peter's Basilica would cement his legacy as one of the most influential architects of the Renaissance, leaving a lasting impact on the history of Western architecture. By the time Michelangelo was appointed chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica in 1546, the project had undergone several phases of construction under different architects, including Donato Bramante, Raphael, and Antonio da San Gallo the Younger. Each architect had left their mark, but the overall design remained inconsistent, plagued by financial struggles and shifting papal priorities. At the time of his appointment, Michelangelo was 71 years old, already a revered artist, but facing significant challenges in reshaping one of Christianity's most important structures. Michelangelo's approach to the basilica was marked by a return to simplicity and unity. He rejected many of the previous design's excessive decorations and instead focused on a centralized, harmonious layout inspired by classical Roman and early Christian architecture. His primary goal was to create a structure that reflected both divine grandeur and architectural clarity. He made significant modifications to Bramante's original plan, emphasizing a massive dome that would dominate the skyline of Rome and serve as a spiritual and visual focal point for the city. One of Michelangelo's most revolutionary contributions to St. Peter's Basilica was his redesign of the dome, a feat of engineering and artistic brilliance. Inspired by the Pantheon and Brunelleschi's dome in Florence, Michelangelo envisioned a soaring, majestic structure that would symbolize the power and authority of the Catholic Church. His design featured a double-shell construction, allowing for both strength and aesthetic elegance. Although he did not live to see its completion, his detailed plans ensured that the dome was built largely according to his vision under the direction of later architects, including Giacomo della Porta. In addition to the dome, Michelangelo made significant changes to the exterior and interior of the basilica. He reinforced the massive piers supporting the dome, redesigned the apse, and introduced a more sculptural approach to the building's facades. His architectural style was characterized by dramatic contrasts of light and shadow, as well as a rhythmic use of columns and pilasters that gave the structure a sense of movement and grandeur. These elements would later influence Baroque architecture, demonstrating Michelangelo's lasting impact on the evolution of architectural design. Beyond the technical and artistic challenges, Michelangelo also faced political and administrative obstacles in his role as chief architect. The papal court was rife with competing interests, and he had to navigate the demands of powerful cardinals, financial constraints, and logistical difficulties. Despite his age and the complexity of the project, Michelangelo remained deeply committed to his work, often visiting the construction site personally to oversee progress and ensure that his vision was being realized. His dedication to the basilica reflected not only his artistic genius, but also his profound sense of duty to his faith and to Rome. Michelangelo's architectural achievements at St. Peter's Basilica extended beyond the building itself. His work helped redefine the role of the architect as both an artist and an engineer, blending artistic vision with structural innovation. In many ways, his contributions to architecture paralleled his achievements in sculpture and painting. He brought a sense of monumental beauty, dynamic movement, and emotional depth to his designs, transforming stone and space into expressions of divine majesty. The influence of Michelangelo's architectural work extended far beyond St. Peter's Basilica. His designs inspired countless architects in the following centuries, including Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who later completed the grand colonnade that surrounds St. Peter's Square. The basilica itself became a model for many domed churches across Europe and remains one of the most visited religious sites in the world. Michelangelo's ability to merge classical principles with innovative structural solutions set new standards for architectural design, influencing movements such as Baroque and neoclassical architecture. Despite his extraordinary achievements, Michelangelo remained humble about his architectural work. He often referred to himself as a sculptor rather than an architect, seeing his involvement in St. Peter's Basilica as a duty rather than a personal ambition. However, history has recognized his contributions as transformative, placing him among the greatest architects of the Renaissance. His work on St. Peter's Basilica not only shaped the identity of the Vatican, but also reinforced his legacy as a universal artistic genius. Michelangelo's work on St. Peter's Basilica represents the culmination of his lifelong dedication to artistic excellence. His architectural vision transformed one of the most significant religious buildings in the world, demonstrating his ability to merge artistic beauty with engineering innovation. Though he did not live to see the final completion of the basilica, his influence remains evident in every corner of the structure. His work ensured that St. Peter's Basilica would stand as a symbol of both faith and artistic achievement for generations to come, securing Michelangelo's place as one of the most extraordinary figures in the history of art and architecture. As Michelangelo approached the final years of his life, his artistic focus shifted once again. Having achieved unparalleled success in sculpture, painting, and architecture, he turned increasingly toward a more personal and introspective form of artistic expression. The weight of age, illness, and spiritual contemplation shaped his later works, which revealed a profound sense of humility, mortality, and religious devotion. Though he remained active in various artistic and architectural projects until his last days, Michelangelo's later years were marked by a deep reflection on faith, human suffering, and the transient nature of life. One of the most significant aspects of Michelangelo's later life was his growing preoccupation with religion. While he had always been a man of faith, his spirituality deepened in his later years, influenced by both personal experiences and the broader religious climate of the time. The Catholic Church was undergoing a period of significant transformation due to the Counter-Reformation, and Michelangelo found himself drawn to a more introspective, almost mystical approach to Christianity. His friendship with the poet and religious reformer Vittorio Colonna further nurtured his spiritual inclinations, leading him to contemplate themes of divine grace and personal redemption in his art. This spiritual transformation is evident in his late sculptural works, particularly the Florentine Pietà and the Rondinini Pietà. Unlike the youthful idealism of the Pietà he sculpted in his early career, these later works reveal a raw, unfinished quality, emphasizing emotion over physical perfection. The Florentine Pietà, which he initially intended for his own tomb, features a highly expressive composition, with Christ's limp body supported by Nicodemus, whose face is said to be a self-portrait of Michelangelo. This deeply personal connection between artist and subject illustrates Michelangelo's growing awareness of his own mortality. Even more striking is the Rondinini Pietà, his final sculpture, which remains unfinished. In contrast to his earlier works, which showcased physical strength and anatomical precision, the Rondinini Pietà presents elongated, almost fragmented figures, as if dissolving into spiritual transcendence. This piece, completed just days before his death, serves as a powerful meditation on suffering, death, and the soul's journey toward God. Many art historians interpret this work as Michelangelo's farewell to the physical world, a final acknowledgement that human life is fleeting, but faith endures. Despite his declining health, Michelangelo remained deeply involved in architectural projects, particularly St. Peter's Basilica. Even in his old age, he would visit the construction site, personally inspecting the work to ensure that his vision was being realized. His devotion to the basilica was not merely professional, but also spiritual. He saw it as his final offering to God, a project that would outlive him and serve as a monument to divine glory. This dedication speaks to Michelangelo's unyielding work ethic and his belief that art was a sacred duty, not merely a craft. Beyond his artistic and architectural achievements, Michelangelo also left behind a lesser-known but equally remarkable legacy, his poetry. Throughout his life, he composed numerous sonnets and madrigals, many of which reflected his philosophical and theological concerns. His poems often explored themes of love, beauty, suffering, and the passage of time. In his later years, his poetry became increasingly religious, expressing a deep longing for salvation and an acknowledgement of human frailty. One of his most famous late sonnets declares, "Neither painting nor sculpture can any longer calm my soul. Now turn toward that divine love which opens his arms to welcome me." These words encapsulate Michelangelo's final shift from worldly ambition to spiritual surrender. Michelangelo's relationship with the Catholic Church remained complex throughout his life. While he was deeply devoted to his faith, he often clashed with church authorities over artistic and theological matters. His bold depictions of the human body, particularly in The Last Judgment, had sparked controversy, leading to censorship and modifications. Yet, despite these tensions, he remained loyal to the church, seeing art as a means of expressing divine truth. His later works suggest a man who had made peace with his struggles, turning instead to a more contemplative and humble view of life. As Michelangelo aged, his reputation continued to grow. Unlike many artists who are only recognized posthumously, he was celebrated as a living legend, admired by both his contemporaries and future generations. He had influenced artists such as Raphael, Caravaggio, and Bernini, shaping the course of Western art for centuries to come. Even as he neared death, his mind remained sharp, and his passion for creation never waned. He continued to sketch and sculpt until his final days, as if driven by an unrelenting desire to perfect his art, despite the physical limitations of old age. On February 18, 1564, at the age of 88, Michelangelo passed away in Rome. His death marked the end of an era, as he was one of the last great figures of the High Renaissance. His body was later transported to Florence, where he was buried with great honors in the Basilica of Santa Croce. His tomb, designed by Giorgio Vasari, reflected the immense respect and admiration that he had garnered throughout his lifetime. Even in death, Michelangelo was venerated as a divine artist, a master whose works would continue to inspire and astonish future generations. Michelangelo's final years were characterized by deep introspection, a growing connection to his faith, and an unyielding commitment to artistic excellence. Though physically frail, his creative spirit remained indomitable, and his late works stand as testaments to his evolving artistic philosophy. His sculptures, poetry, and architectural masterpieces from this period reveal a man who had come to terms with his mortality, seeking solace in art and spirituality. His legacy endures not only in his works, but also in the profound influence he had on the development of Western art, ensuring that his name would be remembered for centuries to come. Michelangelo's impact on the world of art and culture is immeasurable. His works, spanning sculpture, painting, architecture, and even poetry, have left an indelible mark on the evolution of Western artistic traditions. As one of the central figures of the Italian Renaissance, Michelangelo not only transformed artistic techniques and standards, but also redefined the role of the artist in society. His influence continued long after his death, inspiring generations of painters, sculptors, architects, and intellectuals, and shaping the course of European art for centuries. One of Michelangelo's most profound contributions to art was his mastery of human anatomy. His ability to depict the human form with precision, dynamism, and emotional depth set new standards in artistic representation. Works such as David, The Creation of Adam, and The Last Judgment showcased his unparalleled understanding of musculature, movement, and proportion. His figures, whether carved from marble or painted on plaster, possessed a lifelike quality that had rarely been achieved before, influencing countless artists, including the Baroque masters of the 17th century. Michelangelo also played a crucial role in the transition from the High Renaissance to Mannerism. While his early works embodied the balance, harmony, and idealized beauty of the Renaissance, his later creations demonstrated a departure from these principles. The figures in The Last Judgment and the Rondinini Pieta are more elongated, expressive, and emotionally intense, anticipating the exaggerated forms and dramatic compositions of Mannerist art. This stylistic evolution inspired artists such as Jacopo Pontormo, Rosso Fiorentino, and El Greco, who sought to push artistic boundaries beyond classical ideals. His impact on architecture was equally groundbreaking. Through his work on St. Peter's Basilica, Michelangelo introduced a more sculptural approach to building design, emphasizing the interplay of light and shadow, monumental forms, and dynamic spatial relationships. His architectural ideas would later influence Baroque architects such as Gian Lorenzo Bernini and Francesco Borromini, who expanded on his concepts of movement and theatricality in architecture. Additionally, his designs for the Laurentian Library and the Capitoline Hill in Rome introduced innovative elements, such as the use of giant pilasters and complex staircases, which became key features in later architectural developments. Beyond his artistic innovations, Michelangelo also helped elevate the status of the artist in society. During the Renaissance, artists were often seen as mere craftsmen, working under the direction of patrons. However, Michelangelo's intense dedication to his work, his refusal to compromise his artistic vision, and his status as a sought-after genius helped establish the idea of the artist as an intellectual and independent creator. His rivalry with contemporaries such as Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael further fueled the perception of the artist as a visionary figure, whose work was driven by personal inspiration rather than mere technical skill. Michelangelo's influence was not confined to Italy. As Renaissance ideas spread across Europe, his works became a source of inspiration for artists in Spain, France, and the Netherlands. His sculptural techniques influenced Spanish artists such as Alonso Barragán, while his use of grand, emotionally charged compositions resonated with French painters like Nicolas Poussin. In England, his artistic philosophy inspired writers and poets, who saw in his work a reflection of divine beauty and human struggle. His legacy became a cornerstone of Western artistic thought, studied and revered by scholars, artists, and architects throughout the centuries. The impact of Michelangelo's work extended into the modern era. During the 19th century, the Romantic movement celebrated him as the quintessential artistic genius, a figure who embodied both creative brilliance and personal torment. Writers such as John Ruskin and Walter Pater admired his ability to infuse his works with profound emotion, while sculptors like Auguste Rodin looked to his dynamic compositions as a model for their own art. Even in the 20th and 21st centuries, Michelangelo's work continues to inspire contemporary artists, filmmakers, and designers who recognize his unparalleled contributions to the visual arts. In addition to his artistic influence, Michelangelo's life and works have also played a significant role in popular culture. His sculptures and paintings are among the most recognized in the world, appearing in countless books, films, and museum exhibitions. The Sistine Chapel ceiling, in particular, has become one of the most visited and revered masterpieces in history, drawing millions of admirers each year. His iconic David remains a symbol of strength and beauty, reproduced in countless forms across the globe. His name has become synonymous with artistic greatness, a testament to the enduring power of his legacy. Michelangelo's impact is also evident in the continued scholarly study of his works. Art historians and researchers continue to analyze his techniques, artistic choices, and philosophical influences, uncovering new insights into his creative process. Advances in technology, including digital restoration and 3D imaging, have allowed for deeper explorations of his methods, revealing details that were previously unseen. As a result, Michelangelo's art remains as relevant and compelling today as it was during the Renaissance, constantly engaging new generations of scholars and art lovers. Michelangelo's legacy is one of unmatched artistic innovation and cultural influence. His mastery of sculpture, painting, and architecture transformed the Renaissance and laid the foundation for future artistic movements. Beyond his technical achievements, he redefined the role of the artist, elevating it to new heights of intellectual and creative significance. His works continue to inspire, educate, and captivate people around the world, proving that true artistic genius transcends time. As long as art is valued and celebrated, Michelangelo's name will endure, standing as a testament to the limitless potential of human creativity. Michelangelo's extraordinary contributions to the world of art and culture have ensured his place as one of the most revered figures in the history of Western art. His works, spanning the realms of sculpture, painting, architecture, and poetry, embody the ideals and complexities of the Renaissance while also transcending the boundaries of any single artistic period. As a master of both the physical and intellectual aspects of art, Michelangelo's life and work provide profound insights into the evolving role of the artist and the nature of creative expression. This final chapter seeks to examine Michelangelo's legacy within the broader context of art history, considering both his lasting impact on the Renaissance and his influence on subsequent artistic movements. Michelangelo's genius cannot be attributed solely to his technical prowess. While his mastery of form, anatomy, and perspective was unmatched, it was his ability to imbue his works with profound emotional and spiritual depth that set him apart from his contemporaries. His sculptures, such as David and the Dying Slave, reveal not just the anatomical precision of the human body, but also an intense psychological complexity, capturing the inner turmoil, suffering, and triumph of the human condition. Michelangelo's figures are not mere representations of the human form. They are living embodiments of the human soul, struggling with the forces of destiny, desire, and faith. In this respect, Michelangelo's art was revolutionary. While many Renaissance artists sought to idealize the human form, Michelangelo sought to capture the very essence of human experience, with all its contradictions and imperfections. His work reflected the Renaissance fascination with the potential of human achievement, yet it also conveyed a deep awareness of human limitation, mortality, and divine transcendence. This duality in Michelangelo's work speaks to the complex intellectual and philosophical currents of his time, particularly the tension between humanism and the prevailing religious beliefs of the era. Michelangelo's influence on the development of art during the Renaissance was immense. He played a pivotal role in shaping the visual language of the High Renaissance, alongside figures such as Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael. His innovations in the use of space, light, and perspective, as well as his development of new techniques in marble sculpture, set new standards for artistic excellence. Yet, unlike his contemporaries, Michelangelo's work was deeply informed by his own internal struggles and religious beliefs, which often placed him in tension with the ideals of the humanist movement. This struggle between faith and reason, between the spiritual and the material, runs throughout his life and work, imbuing his art with a profound sense of depth and meaning. Moreover, Michelangelo's legacy extends far beyond the Renaissance. His influence reverberated through the Baroque period, shaping the work of artists such as Caravaggio, Bernini, and Borromini. In their dramatic use of light and shadow, their exploration of human emotion, and their emphasis on movement and energy, these artists were heavily indebted to Michelangelo's innovations. The Baroque emphasis on dramatic intensity and theatricality, in particular, owes much to Michelangelo's work in both sculpture and painting. His figures, which seemed to burst from the marble or leap off the canvas, provided a model for later artists seeking to create more dynamic, emotionally charged art. In addition to his technical contributions, Michelangelo's artistic philosophy also had a lasting impact on subsequent generations of artists. His belief in the artist's ability to achieve divine inspiration through the creative process elevated the status of the artist as a visionary and intellectual figure. This view of the artist as a divine creator, as opposed to a mere craftsman, would shape the development of art throughout the centuries, influencing the Romantic movement, which emphasized the role of the artist as an individual genius. This notion of the artist as an inspired creator is still present in contemporary understandings of art, where the artist is seen as an agent of personal expression and cultural transformation. Michelangelo's influence also extended into architecture, where his work on St. Peter's Basilica served as a cornerstone for the development of Baroque architecture. His innovative use of space, light, and form in architectural design set the stage for later developments in the 17th century, when Baroque architects sought to create monumental, emotionally engaging spaces. The grandeur and drama of St. Peter's Basilica, with its soaring dome and expansive interior, became a model for churches, public buildings, and monuments throughout Europe. Architects such as Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who designed the colonnade surrounding St. Peter's Square, drew inspiration directly from Michelangelo's vision. Michelangelo's work also resonated deeply with writers and philosophers, particularly during the 19th and 20th centuries. The Romantic movement, with its emphasis on the individual, the sublime, and the expression of deep emotions, found a natural affinity with Michelangelo's art. His intense exploration of the human psyche, his depiction of suffering and transcendence, and his struggle with divine and earthly forces were seen as a reflection of the romantic ideal of the tortured genius. Writers such as John Ruskin and Charles Baudelaire hailed Michelangelo as a symbol of the artist's ability to confront the deepest questions of existence, and his work became a touchstone for romantic thought. In modern times, Michelangelo's art continues to be a source of inspiration and admiration. His sculptures, paintings, and architectural designs are widely reproduced and revered in both scholarly and popular contexts. Museums around the world, including the Uffizi Gallery, the Vatican Museums, and the British Museum, continue to house some of his most celebrated works, while his drawings and sketches are studied for insights into his creative process. Additionally, the continued restoration and preservation of his works, such as the Sistine Chapel ceiling, ensure that his artistic legacy will endure for generations to come. Michelangelo's status as one of the most important figures in the history of art is indisputable. His contributions to sculpture, painting, architecture, and poetry have not only defined the Renaissance, but also left a lasting imprint on the development of Western art. His works transcend time and place, speaking to universal themes of human emotion, divine grace, and the search for meaning. Michelangelo's genius lies not only in his mastery of technique, but also in his ability to capture the essence of the human experience. Through his art, Michelangelo remains a timeless figure, whose works continue to inspire, challenge, and move us across centuries.